guys, this is Miss Smith, and today we're looking at Lesson 2.5, Literal Equations. So if we're going to look at literal equations, we have to know what is that. We probably have not heard the word literal equation before, and so we need to be able to define what that is. And literal equations, guys, are just equations that have two or more variables. Okay, and so most of the things that we know are formulas. Formulas like the area formula, the area of a rectangle, or the circumference of a circle, or any of those kind of things. So if we're going to solve for a specific variable, say we had the area formula, the area of a rectangle. And this is the first time I'm using these tools, so if you guys can just be patient as I'm learning how to use this pencil, and my handwriting is like awful, so it'll get better, I sure hope. Okay, the area of a rectangle, that's probably the most common one, the easiest one that you would recognize. So sometimes it's useful to go around and rearrange this, so maybe we solve for the length instead of the area. And we do that by using the inverse operation, just like we do when we solve. So I wanted to go to last night's spirals, the last lesson spirals, and look at those. I think that will help us make this really easy to understand. If you look down this column right here, these are equations that we're used to working with. We've been solving these equations for quite some time now. They're just one-step equations, and how do you solve it? If you want x by itself, you've got to get rid of the 2, right? So right here, if we're going to get rid of that 2, we need to undo the multiplication that's happening right there. So to undo multiplication, we divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 2, remembering we have to keep it balanced. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. The 2 divided by 2 is 1, so x is equal to 3. And if we were going to move it over and transition into a literal equation, we just replace the 2 with a variable, a, for example. It's still being multiplied times x, so if we're going to get rid of it, we still just need to divide both sides by a. And x would be, you just kind of clean the step up. So a divided by a is 1, and that leaves us with 1x. And 6 divided by a, you can't actually calculate that, so you just write it down just like it is. And that would be your answer. Now, we transition over to all variables. No numbers whatsoever. All we're doing is rearranging. Again, the a needs to go. We want x by itself. So it's being multiplied, so the inverse would be to divide. And once we divide that, we divide a divided by a. Those cancel out. That gives you 1x. And b divided by a, we can't really calculate anything. All we do is just clean it up and make it look prettier and have x by itself, and it's b divided by a. Really is that simple. Let's go down and do just a couple more real quick. If we look at this one, the x is divided by 3. We need to get rid of the 3. The inverse of division is multiplication, so we multiply both sides by 3. X is equal to 15. Moving over here, replace the number 3 with the letter A. Still it's being divided, so you're just going to multiply both sides to keep it balanced. The A divided by A leaves me an X. And 5 times A, we can't really calculate that. It's not numbers, but you're used to seeing it written as 5A. Then transition over to all letters. That's a literal equation. It's all letters there. So we would multiply by a to get rid of it, to get rid of the a that's there, to isolate the x. And we're left with b times a, or ab. So these things are pretty familiar. We want to get rid of the 4. It's being added, so we subtract 4 from both sides. And x would be equal to, what is that, 3. It's late at night. So here, replace the 4 with a k, subtract k from both sides. And k minus k, that cancels, and we're left with x is equal to 7 minus k. Looking over at the other side here, replace everything. Replace the 7 with an f. Literal equations, all variables there. You're just going to subtract k from both sides, just like you did over here. And k minus k is 0, so those literally cancel each other out, and we're left with f minus k. So when you're looking at that, just really is the same thing as solving any other way. We're just doing the inverse operation. So let's go back here to the lesson that we were just working with. Let's look at example number 1. Let's make this a little bit more space here to work with. So it's the formula for circumference. The formula for circumference is C is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. We want to solve or rearrange this equation so that r is by itself. So we're going to solve for r. Now, the goal is to get rid of anything that's with the r. There's a 2 that's being multiplied by the r, and there's a pi that's being multiplied by the r. The inverse of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by the 2 to get rid of the 2. That undoes that. We're also going to divide by the pi because there's a pi there also. They're both being multiplied, so you're going to have to divide both of them. So why not just do it at the same time? Over here, I did it to this side, to the right-hand side. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side to keep it balanced. So I divided by a 2 and an a. So this side I will also divide by a 2. A 2 and a pi. I will also divide this side by 2 and pi. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Pi divided by pi is 1. So on this side, we have 1r. And on this side, there really isn't any simplifying that can happen. All you're doing is just this little cleanup step of rewriting everything exactly like you see it. And that would be 2c over 2 pi. Okay, let's go over here. This one, I hope, looks familiar. In the middle school, we had to put... Okay, now we're going to look at example 2 right here. In example 2, we have 12 is equal to 2x plus 3y. And right here, it asks us to solve for y. So if we're going to solve for y, we need to get rid of the things that are there with y. There's a 2x that's there that we got to get rid of. And there's a 3 that we've got to get rid of. So how are we going to do that? Well, we do the inverse operation like we had up here. We've got to get rid of those addition and subtraction, and we've got to get rid of the multiplying. So if we look, we've got order of operations is the kind of the rule book, what we always go back to in math. And we're looking at, we've got order of operations. The first thing you're going to do if you're working through and simplifying a problem is you're going to do parentheses, then you're going to do exponents, then you're going to multiply and dividing, and then you're going to do adding and subtracting. Well, that arrives you, if you follow those rules, you arrive at an answer. Well, if you're going to backtrack, you're going to go back and solve for a specific variable, you're going to go backwards. You're going to solve order of operations backwards. So looking at that, we look for any addition or subtraction, and this problem has some right here. Here's an addition problem. We need to get rid of what's being added to the 3y. What's being added? A 2x. So we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. If we do it to one side of the equation, you got to do it to the other side. So we have 12 minus 2x on this side is equal to, here, the 2x minus the 2x, well, they go to 0, and it leaves you with 3y. we still have a 3 that we've got to get rid of. There's no more addition or subtraction. Now we've got to get rid of the multiplying and dividing. So there's a 3 that we've got to get rid of. It's being multiplied right there, so we're going to divide. If you do it to one side, you've got to do it to the other side, the whole side. So we have y is equal to 12 minus 2x, all over 3. That is truly solved for y. But if you look at your numbers, you should notice that 3 goes into 12. And so there is some simplifying we can do. But we can't just cancel the 12 and the 3. Otherwise, this 2 over here wouldn't be divided by the 3. And everything has to be divided by 3. So let's break it apart. Kind of using the distributive property, we're dividing every part by 3. So we got the 12 divided by the 3, the 2x divided by the 3, and I'm just bringing the y over here. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 2 divided by 3 stays the fraction 2/3 x is equal to y. So both of these are truly a correct answer, but this one is the one that we prefer most often because it is in simplified terms. Okay, now that's 2 examples. It's time for you guys to do the you try and make sure you check your answers to see if you got them correct.